Hello friends, it's Zion. We're going to jump into part 2 of our interactive parametric modeling, where we're going to spend some time going over slider menu modeling. I'm going to do the rest of this tutorial fairly live so I can get this out quickly to everyone who needs it. There seems to be a lot of people who are interested lately, so let's see if I can make this tutorial a little faster. At this point, after we've created our texture, the thing that I like to do is to orient the camera in a perpendicular scenario with related to either X, Y, or Z. It doesn't matter which way you go. I personally just like to have it in the Z orientation, so I'm going to select my camera. I'm literally going to zero everything out. Let's see if we can actually do that easily. There we go. Zero those. Zero those. My fingers aren't working, or my mouse. Something is not happy with me today. There we go. And then I'm going to move this in the Z direction just to get off the floor here. That's probably good enough. For right now, I'm going to hide the base object so we can just concentrate on the menu items that we have to build. Okay, so if I look at the camera view, it's just a straight-on view. We have the X and Y plane in front of me, so I can have everything oriented in a way that makes sense when I'm doing the texture mapping as well. So for the texture map that we have, which is that 1024 by 1024 map, which is based on a 4x2 grid, with each cell being 512 by 256, that's a 2:1 ratio. I can make a plane object. I'll just do Shift A, add a mesh, and I'm going to do a plane. And that's not very helpful because my cursor's not at the world origin, so let's do that. Cursor world origin. Now I'll do a Shift A, mesh plane. Now I have a plane. Great. I'm going to scale it in the X direction by 2, and now I have a 2:1 object, which we can now map the texture that we created to. I'll explain in a little bit more detail here. So let's go to the UV editing, if I can actually get that to not do something strange. I'm going to zoom in here. Let's see, I get myself in face mode. Got that selected. But actually help if I created a texture, so let me go do that. So texture, I need a texture. So let's create a new one. And in this case, this is going to be a menu item. And so actually that's part of the questions people ask you. How best to texture a menu item? Well, it's not with that. So we're going to go ahead and do a shader with the, I'm going to need a mix shader. Put that in there. And what else do I need? I need a emission shader. There's emission in here somewhere. There we go. Emission shader. And I'm going to need a, well, do I need a transparent node? No, I don't. So I don't need, at least not for now. So I'll go ahead and set this up. I'll do our emission to the surface. I'll add a texture, in this case our image texture. And plug that over here. Menu, that sounds like the one. And let's take a look at it over here, make sure I've got the right thing. Yep, I do. Okay, so let's go ahead and assign that. If we go in there and we look at it, everything seems correct, right? I don't need the alpha on this one, so I'm not going to worry about it. I am now going to just set up the UV coordinates. Here. Again, this is 0 to 1, which divided by 4, so 0.25 will be the bottom. That'll be this one. We're going to do length first. So let me go wow. Let's not do that. Bring this up. The UV vertex. Oh man, come on now. There we are. Okay, so this one needs to be at X is 0, Y is 0.25. This one needs to be at Y of 0.25 and an X of 0.5 because it's halfway across. It's a 2x4. This one needs to come down to 0.25 plus, it's supposed to be a Y of 0.5. And this one over here is going to be 0.5. 5.5. So again, that power of 2 texture allows you to have really simple UV coordinates because it breaks down or divides really easily with the math that we have inside Blender. I shouldn't say the math. I should say the precision is the best way of putting that. Okay, so now that that's been assigned, we can take a look at how it looks on our object. There's our first one. Okay, now back in layout mode, we can actually see things pretty clearly. What I want to do is replicate this particular object for a total of 7, so we have all our menu items. And then I'm going to just snap them together. But for now, I'm not too worried about where they're located. All I'm worried about is creating a stack of these particular objects. So let's go Shift-D, copy that. Shift-D, Shift-D, that's 4, 5, 6. There is some lagginess in my computer tonight. I don't know why. Gee, I should probably reboot. Let's go ahead and lock these up with each other, get them snapped together in the right place. It's probably because I have Final Cut running. Wow, what the heck has happened there? There we go. Let's move our little frame up. Helps if I hit G and not H. Alright, they're all linked. Now, when I do a menu, I like to create a spacer at the top, and that spacer allows me to have icons at the top, like a menu button or a hamburger or a full screen button or any other things. And so I'm just going to create a little one there right now. Let's go ahead in my inbox mode. I am, that works. Scale Y, I don't, something about the big work. And I'm just going to lock it right there. Okay, so now I need to go change the UV on that one because I don't want that label there. So I'm going to go there, scale this thing down, and then stick it in a white zone so it's the same color white. I can always come back and map that to something else if I need it to. Okay, so now back to layout, and we have this lovely fun thing. If we go look at it in camera mode, it's not bad. Let's make sure I get everything I did. Smooth this. Not worry too much. What is going on with my mouse? Strange things happening on my computer right now. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and parent all these things up to the spacer. I don't know if that actually works that way. And it did. Fantastic. They're all parented here. So if I move that, done. The next thing, ultimately this is going to go, in this corner somewhere. So I'm just going to scale this to be about the size that I want. I also always tend to leave a little space at the bottom in case there's going to be a footer, or there's going to be some legal language, or who knows what might end up going in there. I'm not really trying to place it. I'm just trying to gauge roughly how big I want this, or this overall scale. Something like that. This is going to lock into the corners, so I'm not too worried. So the next thing we need to do is parent our object to the camera. So the first thing I always recommend is setting the cursor at the object you're going to parent, especially in this case, because when we do, we're going to turn on our camera so you can see where that's going to go, because that's where we're going to parent it to. And when I go ahead and do this, I'm going to parent, Command key, keep the transform. Now I have, in order for this to actually do what we need it to, I have to clear the inverse, or the parent inverse, I forgot what it's called. Clear parent inverse, and that's going to send it flying up there. And the reason I kept this cursor where it was is so I can now just say, okay, fine, go back to where you were, and now all's wonderful. It's attached to the camera. No matter how I turn it, it's all looking good, and that's what I need. But the real reason for clearing that parent inverse is so that the Verge settings down here. Actually, the visibility breakpoints work and fit to camera edge work properly. Without that, that won't work. So under your object properties, scroll down to your Verge3D settings, turn on visibility breakpoints. In this case, it can be on all of them if you want to just play around and see how that functions and disappears. You can select landscape. When you go to portrait, your menu will disappear, but for now we can just leave it to all. Horizontal, we want this to snap to the right side of the screen, and vertically I want it to go on the top. So that's the settings for that. Now that's going to lock that into that corner. There will not be a border around the edge. It'll totally snap it in place. So now the next step for me will be at least do some cleanup. I'm going to change my main menu item up here, the thing that's parented to the camera. I'm going to call that the menu, for lack of a more generic and totally descriptive name. I then need to go ahead and assign each of these the correct texture or UV location. Our next step is to go ahead and change the UV mapping of these buttons that we have currently now that are currently all linked. Let's go ahead and get those changed out. So for this first one, length width I think is the next best thing we should shoot for. So we'll go to face mode. And this is all repetition, but let's see, GY 0.5 to go up to the width. And our next one will be height. And again, the order that you do these is totally up to you. You don't have to do, you can do whatever order you want, but the principle is the same. And GY 0.25, that gets that. Base. Let's see, top. Let's go GY 0.5, GX 0.5. Object, this one, face, that one. I'm going to do the front angle first. Oh, I'm still doing that one. So GY 0.25, GX 0.5, that's the bottom. Face. And I need the front angle, GX 0.5, GY minus 0.25. Did I do that right? I don't think I did that right. GY minus 0.25. That's better. Okay, and then this one is face. GX 0.5. Alright, that takes care of all the UV mapping for our lovely menu system. So you can see they're all the way they're supposed to be. Alright, I am back. I had to do a reboot, and that seemed to solve the mouse problem and also fix the screencast keys. So let's get on with it here. The next thing is the slider button that we need to create. So let me see. The best way of saying this is when you have your camera at a strange orientation, anything other than perpendicular, when you do a constraint to an object that's linked to the camera, those calculations are far more difficult than if the camera were perpendicular. So it's just my personal experience, having done this a number of times. I don't even bother trying to do any other way than to take the camera and go back and reset that all to 0. 0 and 0 at these, and then from there I can get the camera in an XY. Let's see, GZ. Let's get that off the floor because I like that. Look at my camera. Now I've got an XY coordinate system that I can create things in. That's really simple. For now, I need to create a plane object because that's what we're going to map our little dot to. I'm going to position my cursor to the background of that particular object since it happens to be centered to where I want it. I'm going to Shift A, add a meshed plane. That's way too big. Scale 0.1, scale 0.1. All right, we're kind of in the zone. Before I screw anything up, I'm going to go ahead and parent that to my spacer. So in case I accidentally move my camera, it stays in the correct orientation. I'm going to, should I give that a name? Probably should. Where is it? so many planes. Plane 7 maybe? Yep. Alright, let's call this button slider. And let's see, give this a name. I'm going to call it background, no, menu length back, so I know it's the background of that. Menu width back. Just do these all real quick. Menu height back. You can name these whatever you want, just something, so just some cleanup. This is the TSD back. Menu BSD back. Oops. Menu BA. Yeah, that works. Back angle. Man, having problems tonight. Menu front angle. Okay. Now this is, I want the button slider. There we go. And we're going to change the material on that. And the base material we're going to start with, well, it's called material now, and that's a good time to change the name of that. And I'm going to call this menu background. But what I need this is one that's going to be transparent. And if you recall, when we made the original shader, this shader here was just a straight emission shader. So we're going to go ahead and duplicate this, and we're going to call this button slider. And to change this the way we need to and still look good, we obviously need to keep it as an emission shader base, but we need to add some transparency, obviously. So a transparent BSDF would be good. And we're going to need a mixed node. Add shader. Let's see. Well, maybe I didn't fix that mouse after all. Mix shader. Okay, shove that in there. Shove that over there. Wow, maybe my mouse is dying. I was hoping it was that cable. Okay, so then the alpha, let's see if we go to our menu, open this up, and the slider selected, so let's see where we're at. Well, first off, we have some Z fighting, so we'll scoot that up in the Z. Let's make sure we're in the right, yeah, GZ. And go there. About there is fine. That'll work. Don't have any Z fighting there. We need to change this blend mode to alpha blend, and now it's at least transparent, but it's not quite working right. And then if we add to the factor, it's backwards, so we'll add a color invert color node right there, and then that should take care of it, at least so you can kind of see it working. Let's go ahead and change the UV mapping on that. Let's go ahead and take this scale, wrong way, scale 0.5. Okay, scale really nice down there. G, come on over. Just get that lined up pretty good. That's really big on the screen. So we'll go back to camera view. Boom. And we can see that's monstrous. So let's scale that by 0.5. That'll work. So that's going to be my big enough piece for a slider, and it's all set to go. So the only thing now is to set the maximum and minimum location, because right now someone can move this anywhere, and that's not what we want. So we need to set up a constraint on this, and the add object constraint we want is limit location. And in this case, we want to limit the X direction. And if you recall, we went into this mode so that we could capture that perfectly. So when we go in here, we can say, okay, my maximum distance for x is going to be gx. Slide it over to the maximum x we want, and there's our value that we want to use. It's not going to be an XYZ composite, it's just going to be the X component only. So this is our maximum, and we're going to pop that in there, and that's our max. So now we're going to go back and we're going to grab it, and we're going to go GX and go find what our minimum is. Visually I'm doing this all by look and feel. I may want to go a little bit further to there. Go back to my object properties, grab my new X, and go back to my constraints, and go to my X minimum, and pop that number in there. And now, even in Blender GX, it's constrained. I can't do anything else but go in there. I can't go up and down. It's perfectly constrained. So when you're done here, you can either decide your minimum value, just go ahead and set that, and just slide it over, you're good, or leave it in the middle wherever you want it to be as default. You might also just go ahead and leave it there. Before we move on, we should probably do some additional organization cleanup. So we're going to go down here, make sure our auto repeat indefinitely, and then receive shadows is unchecked. But the most important thing we want to do is make sure that on our limit locations that we have this world space changed to local space. If we don't do that, what will happen is you scroll the camera and all of a sudden that little guy is all over the place, and that's not going to work. So if you change that over to local space, now when you move the camera, everything is fine. It looks good. So we're going to go ahead at this point and duplicate this down. Shift B, GY, and we'll call that button slider W. Shift D, GY. About there. Height. This one's a step down. Top, step down. Bottom, step down. Anyway, tired. Okay, all those are renamed. Now when we move our camera, they're all perfectly fine. There's no moving around. Everything's linked the way it should be. These all should also GX. They're all locked in. We're set. So now we can actually go back and turn on our base object and get that into the view we want. We can actually start creating some camera targets and things like that. So right now I'm going to switch views and see where my camera is, totally perpendicular. Probably not where I want it. So let's just interactively change it to the way I want. That's good. Okay. I'm thinking I like that angle. Why not? Okay. So let's see. It's been a while. Why is this red? Because I made it red. So let's change that while we're here. So we can use some kind of metal color, whitish. Let's go shading mode. Let's see what we got here. I'm not going to do very complicated coloring. You guys can assign whatever texture you want to it. I'm just going to make it a metallic. I'm going to bump up the specular a bit, turn down the roughness a bit. It doesn't really matter. Let's see. Well, that's probably a little bit shiny. Let's see. Probably too shiny for my purposes here. Something like that. It just looks metal. I don't know what metal this is, whether it's aluminum or steel or anything, but you can make your profile, in this case, any color you want, but that works for me. So I'm going to go back to camera view, and I'm going to swap over to layout, get that camera right there. So okay, now with the camera selected, I'm going to go ahead and create a location for it. So I'm just going to send my cursor to the selected, which is a camera. You can go back out to another view. You can see I put one there, and I'm going to add an empty, in this case, a plane axis, and I'm just going to call that cam location. And then I'm going to take the center of this part and make a target roughly let's go ahead, since it's offset, G X, move that to there. I'm going to call that cam target. And we'll come back and add some additional targets. So when the object is wide, actually we could do that now. Base, we're going to go over here, and we're going to, the length is probably the one that's going to cause that to really change what the camera looks like. Let's see. Yeah, so we're a little close. So let's zoom out a little bit. Let's go there. Select the camera again. I'm going to go ahead and shift cursor to my camera, go back out so you can see where I'm at, and now I have a new camera location. I'm going to add another empty, and I'm going to call this cam location, and I'm going to call this length. I may want that one that's really wide. Let's go back and see how this looks if I change another parameter on the base. That one's fine. How about width? That one will probably want a different spot. So I'm going to roll my camera back a little bit, position it maybe here. That's a good spot. Again, select the camera, Shift S, cursor to selected, and you can just go ahead and add an empty. You know where it's going. And then I'm going to call this cam location. I think this was W and H, because I'll use it for width and height. Okay, so that should do it. And then I'm going to rethink this empty here, which is our target. Let's see. Camera target. That was... I'm going to make this base. Camera location base. And then I'm going to go ahead and add another one. Shift S. Cursor to selected, and I'm going to add another empty, and then I'm going to GX that and move that there, and Y, Z actually, move that down to about there and call it cam target large. And we may have to adjust that a little bit over time going back and forth to make sure the angle's right, but at least I have all my targets in place, and I can move the cameras back and forth depending on the size of the object and go from there. So we can definitely use tweens, I guess is a better way of putting that. Well, that's a wrap on part 2. Let's move over to part 3 where we can get started with puzzles and get this thing connected for you. Please like and subscribe. Be greatly appreciated so we can keep bringing you more great content. We'll see you soon.